Okay, hey, we're live. How you doing, everybody? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Today we got David Lucarelli, who the creator of Tinsel Town.
Hey
I said
guys.
his name right?
Yep, you did.
Go make sure that I don't want to start the interview off being all embarrassing. So, I would like to say that in a healthy industry, I know I tweeted this before, so I'm sure you heard me say this. In a healthy industry, your comic Tinsel Town would be the talk of the town. People would be celebrating this comic. The fact I hate that I'm even saying this, that it's going under the radar is criminal.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that, and I'm from your lips to God's ears.
Yeah. You want to tell people what the comic is? Here's the first
Yeah.
issue.
So, for anybody not familiar, Tinsel Town is a period crime drama about one of the first female police officers in Hollywood. So it's been likened to L.A. Confidential meets Boardwalk Empire. In real life, my mother was a police officer, so it's also my tribute to her. Tells the story of Abigail Moore, who is the daughter of a fallen police officer. She tries to become a police officer through the LAPD and gets rejected. So she does the next best thing. She goes to an audition to be a police officer at Utopia Studios. And that part was inspired by some real life circumstances. Around 1915, both Universal Studios and D.W. Griffith Studio had female mayor, female police chief, female police officers, or at least Universal did. But there were female police officers at D.W. Griffith Studio as well. And they kind of functioned as a cross between lot tour guides and security guards there to assist and amuse the tourists. And also, on these lots, you had thousands of people coming in and out every day, extras and things like that. So to make sure, keep an eye on them, make sure they didn't get up to any hanky-panky,
Okay, so are you first? So this is like a real world setting. There's no vampires. There's no Godzilla.
No vampires. Nothing supernatural. But if you like vampires, the other book that Tinseltown artist Henry Ponziano and I do is called The Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade.
Oh.
And that is a 3-volume graphic novel set. Oh, thank you. Looks like that. It's kind of a coming-of-age gothic adventure, punk rock Buffy set in Scotland.
Oh, my God. You saying all the right things there, David.
Oh, thank you. Well, so you get 3 volumes, all 3 volumes in the set. You get a slipcase, you get some unreleased art. This is all available as part of the Kickstarter as well. And this is
on Kickstarter right now as well?
Yeah, well, it's part of the Tinseltown Kickstarter.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you like what Henry and I do on Tinseltown, you will probably like this book as well. The reason why it's set in Scotland, it was inspired by the real-life Gorbals vampire incident. So 1950s Scotland, hundreds of school kids went looking for a vampire in this one cemetery. It was considered mass hysteria in real life, but in our book, they find it, they form the brigade. Then a half-century later, there's a couple of juvenile delinquents in that
real
cemetery.
Monster stuff in the real world is just described as mass hysteria. That's how they cover it up.
Oh, yeah. Well, they actually, they blamed it on comic books. Interestingly enough, they used it as they had trials. They banned the importation of American comics.
There really is a behemoth, and he's just pretending it's a comic book to cover.
Oh yeah. I think so. Pizza Yeti, King Cryptid.
Oh,
I mean, yeah.
Plain sight. Oh, that's wily. That's why he always has the sunglasses. That long hair is a wig. That hat. Oh, it totally makes sense now.
He's just a big shaved Yeti. I've seen him in person. You can tell in person, but you can't really tell,
Oh, wow.
On the live stream.
Hiding in plain sight. That's funny.
Yeah.
So cool. So you have a real world setting comic and a fantastic world setting. So what is that? Does that satisfy different itches with you?
Yeah. Well, they may seem like they're very different comics, but they're both about where the protagonists are trying to find their place. And in a world that is at best indifferent and at worst openly hostile to their existence.
Okay, that's cool. I know. I grew up reading superhero comics, and I don't know if because talking to Brian Bow and reading Wolf, but something's been triggering monsters in me. I'm getting, so I will definitely be getting your vampire book. That is awesome. That sounds
cool.
awesome. So let's just talk a little bit about your Kickstarter. So you have the Tinsel Town. This is issue 1 of volume 2.
Yeah.
You can get both. You can get both volumes in a hardcover. Am I correct?
Soft cover, but they
okay.
they are director's cut editions, so they have additional pages of comic story that's not featured in the miniseries, and they have additional unreleased pinups. And in the case of Losing the Light, there's going to be an introduction written by Tony Isabella, who created Black Lightning. Yeah, so
how did you score Tony Isabella? For those of you who do not know, he's like a legendary comic book writer that's been around since the early 70s.
Yeah, I grew up reading his columns in the Comic Buyer's Guide, and somebody told me that he had picked up Tinsel Town and he was a fan. So I just sort of took a chance and reached out to him, and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing the introduction?" And he said, "I'd be honored." So
cool.
Yeah.
So there's going to be pinups. So let me guess, Abigail Moore, like there's going to be a skirt that shows a little bit more ankle than normal.
There's going to be by a bunch of different artists. I think if we hit the stretch goal, then we will start adding pinups, and it's going to be
cool.
Yeah. Hang on one second. I just have to take care of one quick thing here.
Sure. For those of you who don't get the joke that I was talking about, Abigail Moore wanted to be a police officer, and she was hired in Utopia Studios. And one of the things that the studio did was they gave her what was considered like a sexy outfit back in 1910, and I was making a joke like, oh, you can almost see her ankles. But she took it in stride and did what she had to do to pursue her dream of being a police officer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have another live stream I'm supposed to do that. There's a little miscommunication there. I think they want me on now, but I will stay with you because I told them 5:30 and they somehow dropped the ball. Anyhow, I'm back.
Okay. Well, it's good. It's good to be in demand.
Yes.
And thank you for staying. So you said your mother was a police officer?
Yeah, she served as a Pittsburgh police officer for 20 years. And, she had all kinds of crazy adventures. She had a meat cleaver thrown at her one time, and luckily it missed. Yeah. She arrested a murderer, and she was supposed to get an award, her and her partner, but her captain conveniently forgot to mention that to her, so he just accepted the award on their behalf. That kind of thing.
Meat cleaver. Are you in Pittsburgh now?
No, I live in Hollywood. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the other part of Tinsel Town, is that I've been working in Hollywood, working for studios for the past 20 years. So I know a little bit about that culture as well.
Okay. So it sounds like you're kind of a history buff. Like you said.
I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my degree. I have a degree in history also.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot of research. I'll show you just for Tinsel Town. Actually I read this book, which coincidentally is called Tinsel Town, but that was, we already had the title. And there's another book, L.A. Noir, that I read that kind of deals with the history of organized crime in Los Angeles. And this was a book that was important for Losing the Light, because we start to get into espionage.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about that in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely definitely espionage happening in the United States around the time of the First World War that the government largely suppressed news about because they were trying to delay entry into the war.
Yeah, because the first Tinsel Town I thought was a nice character-driven story. Like it was her, for lack of better term, it was her secret origin. Abigail Moore, the main character,
exactly,
became a police officer and working and they didn't take her seriously. She was basically a glorified tour guide, in a prop costume, given a fake gun, and then a real murder happens, a real crime happens, and everybody looked to the uniform. So she stepped up and became a cop. And so the second series, she's kind of established and has some respect. and then you just up the scale to espionage, and because I was wondering where were you going to go? Was it just going to be another crime, like a? But no, this is just like world events of espionage and getting into World War I. I was very, very, very surprised, happily surprised about where you went with it. I thought it was so cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, one of the themes of Losing the Light is the whole theme of identity, and you have actors that change their names when they come out to Hollywood,
Right.
and then you have obviously spies that have dual identities and change their names, and then women when they get married is the third category.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting overlap.
Yeah, it was a good. I can't even speak anymore. It's a good title. It's good. What is that, metaphor? Is that the right? I'm not a writer, so.
Yeah, well, Losing the Light definitely has a dual meaning because, back then when they were filming, the camera stock was very sensitive, and so they had to have a certain amount of light, or else the film would be underexposed. So they were constantly aware of the light, and if it started to get dark too soon, they'd say, "Hey, hurry up, we're losing the light. We got to get the shot." And then also, Abigail is exposed to some very dark forces throughout the course of this book.
I think she's losing her what's dreamy qualities, her the sparkle in her eyes. She's becoming more realistic. You wanted to be a cop? Well, you're going to see some shady stuff if you're a cop. Yeah,
exactly. It's a matter of, how much of that darkness can you be exposed to before it starts to affect you permanently, and you lose some of that inner light that you may have.
Right. And what about Dan? Yeah, I want to ask you this question, but at the same time, I'm scared to ask you: Is he going to turn into a jerk?
No, I don't know why people are so suspicious of Dan. Do they think he's too good to be true?
Because it's Hollywood; they corrupt you.
Right. No, I think
he's such a good guy.
He is a good guy, and I don't think he's going to turn on a dime or anything like that. I think one of the things that allows Abby to survive in a place like Tinsel Town is the fact that Dan is kind of her rock, and vice versa. They're there for each other, and so they can deal with all of the craziness that Tinsel Town has to offer, and they kind of can keep each other in check.
Yeah, it's I like they're a sweet couple, and so. I'm emotionally invested, and that's what you want out of your characters. So if something happens, you're just like, ooh, if I didn't like him so much, I wouldn't be so trepidatious, about the relationship. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about alternative comics in general. For those of you who are not aware, you see the little corner box over there. Oh, before I forget, I love the little corner boxes. It's like a little animated cell, like she's drawing her pistol. It's so cool. Each issue. I didn't even realize that until I put all the comics in a stack and was sorting them. And Abigail it's almost like a cell frames of these corner boxes. You can see every frame she's in a different pose. She's pulling a pistol. So cool. I think that's so clever. Here we got issue 4. She's actually firing. Yeah, that is pretty cool. But alternative comics. Every time I have somebody from Alternative Comics on the show, I got to say, first off, they're the best printed comics coming out. That's one of the things. They feel great. They look great. They smell like comic books should smell. I kind of asked Pete, where does he get them printed? And he said, I'm not telling, because then other people are going to And I was like, good answer.
He's very secretive about that stuff. He won't even tell us. Oh, yeah.
And then next thing you know, with them, he can't go back to the guys that are making these great comics, but they really are. These are like the best printed physical comic books, and then we'll talk about the art and the writing, which it's great. Alternate is firing on all cylinders right now. This you guys are you got Tinsel Town, you got Fabio's H. Horace Hoover, which I always stumble when I say that. You got Wolf and Batsy, such good stuff. Unit 44, you guys are, I don't know. You're like a well-oiled machine right now, pumping out some really good comics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which begs the question: Is there going to be a volume 3 coming out?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
Yes. The theme of volume 3. I have a title and I have a general plot outline. It's going to be called Tinsel Town Lady Killer, and it's gonna deal with the nature of fame, because the way that we think of fame in our modern times is really being established in Hollywood at that period. And so it's going to be, there's the bright side of fame, the freedom that it affords you to basically do whatever you want. And then there's the dark side of fame that you can get away with a lot of stuff and not be held to account, and people can turn on you and become obsessive stalkers and that kind of thing. And then, you know, in the history of America, the other couple of ways that one can get famous is one can be an outlaw or one can be a killer. And in 1917 Hollywood, what with the ties between the entertainment industry and the mob, all those types of fame are kind of coming together at the same period.
Oh, that sounds pretty dark. Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have like infamy as well as fame.
Yes,
cool,
I would say.
Cool. That sounds good. Poor Abigail. Nothing better happened to Dan. Well, I know. Don't spoil.
No.
But that's just it. I want to know. You know what I mean? It's a good comic. That's why I'm excited to learn more. And this is gonna be another 5-issue series.
Yes, it will.
Oh, okay, so I guess that's gonna be a theme. 5-issue miniseries. So what do you do? Your process is you do all 5 and then you go to print?
Well, with Tinsel Town losing the light, we had some of it in the can and then we started printing. And then with the pandemic, there were some delays in between issues. But with this one, I think it will probably wait until we've got at least 3 of them in the can so that we can make sure it comes out every quarter.
Okay, and you're staying with Alterna?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's great. That's great news. As I was saying, like I went into a store and I saw, I forget what comic it was. I think it was a Mother Russia or something like that. It was a 3-issue Alterna comic. I didn't even hear the company, and then I picked it up because it was like $1.50. So that's what put Alterna on my on my radar.
Yes.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick up these comics are cheap, affordable. You know, I don't want inexpensive, I guess is the best way to put it. And then I picked up Tinsel Town, and I was like, this sounds interesting, and I was blown away. I got it cold. I got it without, like, nobody told me to pick it up. I just picked it up because you know, it was really the right price at, you know, in a place where comic books are $5-6 a piece. So I got them, and I sat and I read them all in one sitting. And I think I messaged you on Twitter and asked if I could do a showcase on my channel, and you're like, yeah, go ahead. You know, I was that excited. Like, I read 5 comic books, took out my stupid phone and made a video, and you know, I had to share this with the world. You know, so that just shows you that's the way I am. I get excited about stuff. I'm like a little kid, but you know, I think all comic book fans have this little kidness in, you know.
Oh, for sure. I think it keeps you young.
Yes. Now we were talking a little bit before. You don't draw. You're a writer, right?
Right. Unfortunately, I mean, I've dabbled a little bit in drawing, but I don't have the talent.
Yeah, I think all people that like comic books started out trying to draw. You know, I tried to draw. I can't draw. So
yeah.
Do you write other things other than comics? Or
I do. Yeah. I mean, as a musician, I'm a songwriter, and I've also written a couple of plays.
Oh, wow.
Some short stories. Yeah. In fact, the most recent play that I wrote is called Crude. We put it on. We had a couple sold out runs last summer in Hollywood as part of the Hollywood Fringe Festival, and it was cool. It was about a fictitious band that comes up off the gutters of Hollywood in the 1980s to become a cultural phenomenon, and how for one brief shining moment everything seems possible. And it is in no way, shape, or form endorsed by Motley Crue or any of its members.
That's cool. Oh, so wow, that's cool. You got plays written and that are being performed. That is awesome.
Yeah, and actually, there's a pay-per-view version of the play that you can see for yourself. It's part of one of the reward levels of the Tinsel Town Kickstarter. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I wrote we had to write a play for a class years ago, and nobody would touch my play with a 10-foot pole. I tried to make it humorous. There's nothing worse than not writing. There's nothing worse than writing humor that's not funny. I think about that. So let's get back to Tinsel Town. So it's on.
Sure.
it's the director's cuts on Kickstarter right now. So I put the link right here below, right there. You can go down there and back it. Now, this is going to be your own. So this is an alternative. This is your own.
Yeah, this is coming out through my own imprint, which is
Okay.
Abacab Studios, and but Pete is designing the book. Peter
okay.
Samedi, the head of Alterna. So it's going to look just like Volume 1. And the reason why Alterna's not putting out is just because they are just doing single issues now. They're not doing graphic novels. So
Okay.
it's a little too big to staple together. So, you know, he said, just put it out yourself. And
Okay,
and,
good.
yeah.
That's good. That's good. So that's your part. And I know I'm going to murder the name of your art, Henry Ponciano. Did I say that correct?
No, that's right. That's correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and he's also your artist on your other book.
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
guys like childhood friends? Did you just meet? Like,
No, we met. Originally, I had a different artist on the brigade who fell off the face of the earth, and then I found Henry in the classified section of Deviant Art, and he lives in the Philippines. We've actually never met, but we've been working together on comics now for about a decade.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it's great. We have a great creative relationship, and you know, he was a great artist 10 years ago. I think he just keeps getting better with every page and every panel. So
yeah, he's got great storytelling. What I mean by storytelling is the ability to convey a story through the pages and illustrations, you know, regardless of the words. You know, I think that is, you could be a great artist.
Yes.
And a terrible storyteller. He's good. He's good. You could take away the words of Tinsel Town and you could still get the gist of what's going on. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely, if somebody out there wants to write comics, you have to look for that, because there are lots of people out there that may be able to do pinups and may be able to do great covers, but there's really an art in and of itself to just telling a story with pictures.
Right. The early Image comics come to mind. I picked up a bunch of them that I've been missing, and since I've been doing this channel, I've been paying more attention to like crafting of comic books.
Yeah.
And I was testing myself. I wasn't reading the words, and I was going through this comic prophet, and I could not tell. It was just stagnant post pinup shots.
Mm-hmm.
This is awful. So then, you know, every time I read a comic now, I do this little experiment. So I was doing it with Tinsel Town last night. I'm like, yep, you could tell. I mean, yes, I already read the story, so I guess that's a cheat. But
that
yes,
probably helps. But yeah.
yeah. But you know, I can't remember the exact details. But you could follow the story. It's really good. He's a good artist, you know.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see. Now I'm all excited to see him doing children hunting vampires. I don't know. That's right up my alley these days. And your colorist is HDE.
No, actually, so Henry does the inks and the colors himself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So HDE, yeah, there's a mock-up of the cover. HDE was the letterer for the first Tinsel Town. He's actually not in the book, so in the final book, his name's not going to be on the cover.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Wes Loker doing the lettering. He does a great job.
For those of you who don't know, he does Unit 44.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another good guy. Yeah, he's funny. He makes me laugh. Oh, cool. And so did you hire him through Alterna, or did you know?
Yeah, Pete turned me on to him.
Oh, okay, yeah, because he colors a few things, right? And letters a few things.
I think so. Yeah. Well, I know he letters. I mean, he doesn't color.
Yeah, I said colored because I have too much caffeine. I wake up way early in the morning, so I drink like a pot of coffee before I do these interviews. Otherwise, I'm passing out. I remember I was talking to Pete Samedi, and I just started to crash just because, you know, I wake up at 4 a.m, and I was like, "Well, Pete, I got it," and he just looked at me like he could have talked for another 2 hours, and I wish I could have talked to him. He, you know, very, very animated guy. I love him to death. What was I going to say next? Geez. So, are you live in Hollywood?
Yes.
And now, obviously, this comic is set in fictitious Utopia Studios, which is not a real studio. It's something that you made up for your comic. Are you like a early Hollywood? Is this like a thing for you, or did you just have an idea for a comic? Or, you know, because there's a lot of people that are really interested in the origins of Hollywood. Yeah,
no, I'm interested in it, definitely. I worked on the 20th Century Fox lot for about 20 years. So there's a lot of interesting history there. There's like a brass statue of Shirley Temple. And, for those of you who don't know, there were times when 20th Century Fox was on the verge of going out of business, and her little pictures like the good ship Lollipop were the things that allowed them to weather the storm. So they very much valued her as a child star.
Yeah.
But yeah, other books that I used, like Adventures with D.W. Griffith, talking all about the early days of that studio. A couple books here, early Universal City, early Hollywood, the story of Hollywood. Yeah, so I guess you could say I'm a buff.
Oh, cool. Now you say you worked at Universal. Are you like
At
a
Fox,
writer?
I worked.
I'm sorry.
So at 20th Century Fox, not
Okay.
Universal. Yeah. So my day job is I am a ADR mixer.
Okay.
So actors and actresses for TV and film come in to redo or add or change their lines of dialogue, and they stand in a room where they see themselves on screen, and they hear 3 beeps, and then where the 4th imaginary beep is, they try to hopefully speak in sync so that they match their dialogue while we're re-recording it.
Okay.
And so I've been doing that for 20 plus years, and working with some top, directors and stars and all of that. And I think it's helped me train my ear for writing good dialogue, hopefully.
Yeah. Dialogue is tough. I tried to write. I submitted something, and my critique was people don't speak like that. And getting it back, like, yeah, you're right. You hear it. Yeah, that's why I think editors are so important. You can't edit your own stuff. I guess you just don't hear it because you know how it's supposed to sound or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things Stan Lee talked about is he would always speak his dialogue out loud to see if it sounded natural. That's a good way to
I guess he needed to speak louder because some of his dialogue.
Well, some of his dialogue by today's standards sounds kind of stilted, but it was of the time for sure.
So that's pretty cool. So your day job, it combines writing and then music. It seems like those are 2 of the things that you're very into.
Well, it combines helping other people tell their stories with audio engineering. There's not really much of a creative component about it, aside from the fact that I have my ears tuned to what they're doing, so I can offer advice about, you might need to pitch up a little bit, or you might need to project a little more, a little less, or I think you're rushing that part of the line. You need to slow down a little bit, that kind of thing.
Do they get annoyed at you? Because I can imagine like that famous clip of William Shatner. I say sabotage. You say
sabotage. Yeah. No, you just have to be able to feel the room. There are some directors, obviously, that don't want to hear any input from you at all, and then there are others that are much more open, and it's much more collaborative process. Most actors aren't wildly enthusiastic about doing it, but it's kind of like going to the dentist. They know that ultimately it's good for them. It's good for their performance.
And it's got to be done.
They just got to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a famous story of Jack Nicholson in that movie Wolf.
Uh-huh.
Now I can't remember, but who was the guy from Saturday Night Live who was killed by his wife?
Phil Hartman. Yeah,
Phil Hartman
tragic.
did the ADR for Jack Nicholson in Wolf. Because Jack didn't want to have to, and so he was telling Jack Nicholson when he finally met him, and he goes, that's probably why my movie bombed. The arrogance.
Right. Yeah, thanks for ruining my movie.
Thanks for it wasn't my fault. The movie, it wasn't my performance. It was your performance that ruined me.
Yeah.
So, get back to Tinsel Town losing light. I wanted to talk about this espionage plot.
Yeah.
When I first started reading, because like I said, I love Tinsel Town. To me, it was like, oh my God, this alternate company is an important company. I get these things in my head. Like when I was a kid, I first started reading Eclipse comics, and I was like, Eclipse is important. So I kind of tried to get everything by Eclipse. I think all comic book collectors get a little manic, and obsessive. We put them in plastic bags and number them and whatever. So now I got that. Your comic is what got me to become like manic obsessive about Alterna. So, and one of the things that I do because I'm a crazy person, is whenever I decide that I like something, I play a game called Beat the Writer. So I read your comic, or I
Okay.
read your story, and I'm like, okay, I'll stop. This is where he's going. This is, what he's, and if I could come up with a better, more interesting story, I win.
Sure.
And I don't want to win. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And if you could come up with, the writer's story. So with Losing the Light, I was like, where are they going? Like it didn't. I didn't even think of the of going into Mexico to spy and I was like this. So I was like, this has got to be real. So it actually got me to start looking up, and it's like you said, stuff like this did happen.
Yeah.
Now is this a story that Oh, hello, Raven Saber saying hello.
Hey.
Did you do research? Did you discover this, or is this like something that you heard that said this would make a great story? Because it's a great story.
Well, okay. So the story itself.
I think I just lost you there.
Okay.
Oh, you said okay, and then you froze.
Okay. The story itself is fictional, but it's based on certain kinds of things that were happening. So one of the books I showed earlier, Dark Invasion, the United States was actually the victim of a lot of espionage and terrorism by Germans that were in the United States. A lot of them were sailors that had come in from ships, and they were planning pipe bombs on the supply ships that were traveling to Europe. And theoretically, those ships were supposed to be supplying both Germany and Germany's enemies, but because of the way the blockades work, they were really just going to Germany's enemies. And so it was kind of this game of cat and mouse where you had police in the New York Harbor area that were trying to track down and stop these acts of terrorism. The United States government was kind of suppressing it because they were trying to delay their entry into the war as long as possible. And I don't want to give away too much of the twist of Losing the Light, but
right, yeah.
the Zimmerman telegram was a real thing. And so one can extrapolate from that, perhaps, that there was communication happening between Germany and Mexico during the First World War.
Right. I remember that was, there was like a whole, growing up, I've always been interested in history. Like I said, I have a degree in history, but my degree in history is Greco-Persian, Roman Empire stuff.
Okay.
So, the more we get to the modern world, the less I know about it scholastically. But I would ask people, my father included as a kid, why did we get involved in World War I? And I didn't hear until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago about this whole big Germany-Mexico alliance, and they were. Mexico was going to set up, Germans were going to set up these like bases along the American border. And, and it started to like spark a lot of interest in me. And I have been doing a lot of research on this on my own, like years before I heard about your comic.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I'm so mad that, glad actually that you beat me in my little writer's game, because I'm like, oh my God, he's doing this stuff. So, it was, I was like, and I'm parsing my words because I don't want to spoil the comic for those of you.
Yeah. Right.
So I was really excited about that. I think it's a cool thing, and you don't see movies about it. You never see comic books about it. You know what I mean? Like you never hear comics about this. I think it is really like it's your frontier now to write comics. First off, in early Hollywood, and then this pre-World War II America is how many comics there was, like the early DC, but they were like westerns. This is not really that. This is untrod territory, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so cool. I think so. Although it's funny, there does seem to be sort of a mini trend of female police officers in comics. Well, you and I were just talking about Mike Barron did that book, Thin Blue Line, right?
Yep.
And then Tom King just brought back Lady Cop for an issue. And then there's a buddy of mine, Carrick, who just launched a book, which is also on Kickstarter, called Jacqueline Jones. And this is a book about a female police officer. It's actually set in the 1950s. And it owes a little bit more to books like Dick Tracy and The Spirit. But okay, if you're watching this and you're a fan of Tinsel Town, I would definitely check out Jacqueline Jones on Kickstarter as well, because it's a good book and, it's its own thing. And I've been kind of kind of consulting with Carrick as he's been working on his book and trying to offer advice as he goes.
We are in like a bizarre golden age of comics right now. You can get a comic about anything, but I just find it so amazing that there's billion-dollar comic book movies in that everybody, including your grandmother, like right now, like my aunt knows who Adam Warlock is. You know, and yet we comic books, comic book stores are closing, you know, and we right now you should be going to supermarkets. There should be a spinner rack with Archies, you know, and all ages Marvel stuff. I'm a big fan of all ages comics. That's why when I saw Alterna was putting out all ages comics, I was, you know, I scooped up a bunch of them and I give them away. I have like 25 nieces and nephews, so I give them away. And I told the story, like, I think last week. I had a friend come over with his two daughters, and I was giving them Baron Rat comics, Alterna comic, and they looked at me. I expected to be like, "Who's Baron Rat?" You know, but they looked at me. What's a comic book?
Oh yeah, right.
And I was like crestfallen. I was like, "What do you mean?" And my friend Tommy was just like, "They never saw comic books." You know,
right?
How amazing is that? That right now everybody knows who Thanos is. Can you imagine? 20 years ago, you'd be like, at one point, everybody, my grandmother's going to know who Thanos is. They're going to know what the snap is. And now, but at the same time, nobody knows what comic books are. Unbelievable.
Yeah, you know, when I first joined Alterna, they had some newsstand distribution too, which was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, they don't have that anymore, but it is a challenge to keep it in front of the eyes of the younger generation. I mean, I have a son who's 14, and you know,
manga, right?
He's into manga and anime and things like that. And really, at the end of the day, is manga, and he loves Marvel movies. You know, don't get me wrong.
Manga's good. It's not like I'm saying, oh God, he's reading manga. Manga's good. You know, I'm 54. I never got into it. It just wasn't part of my childhood. So now I got like my nieces and nephews are recommending manga for their old uncle. You know, and I'm trying to get them to read comics, and they're looking at me like, I'm not spending $6 an issue when I can spend $18 and get a complete story.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that, you know, you have two conflicting forces. I think one is decompressed storytelling, which in comics, you know, stories that maybe used to last one issue are probably 5 issues, which I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But I think if you look at shows like Breaking Bad and things like that, or Better Call Saul, you know, it is possible to tell a much more overall emotionally satisfying, in-depth story by spacing it out that way. But the downside of that is if you're a kid who's got $5 in his pocket and he gets a random issue of any Marvel or DC book, he may just be getting a piece of the story, and it's not a satisfying chunk,
right?
You know, where he's going to be hooked. Versus, you know, when comics first came out, 64 pages for a dime, and you had maybe at least a half dozen stories.
Right, a full story, yeah. You know, that's why, you know, like Wolf and Batsy, you could pick up for $1.50, get a whole story, satisfying. You know, Wes over at Unit 44. It's just each issue so far has been a complete story. I love that cult issue. Oh my God, that was you know the issue.
I haven't read it yet, but don't spoil
it. Okay, I won't spoil it. They join a cult.
Okay,
it's excellent. I was laughing my ass off the whole comic. All right. I'm
yeah, Wolf and Bats is great. I've read some of it. I haven't read that one yet.
That was really good. And then those 80 pages of T-Bird and Throttle, some of the best comics I've ever read. Like I when I talked to Josh Howard, I literally stood up once I figured out what was going on. I was like, oh my God! Like I got excited. I was chomping at the bit for the next issue. That's what comic books are supposed to be, exciting. And now I blame Brian Michael Bendis. I get those Avengers disassembled, and it was just like every month I was like, what happened last issue? Oh yeah, they sat around and they were talking about, you know, Starbucks or something like that. You know, nothing really happened. And then they would talk about the threat, and then they would finally fight the bad guy in like the 3rd issue of this major story. But 3 issues were set. No, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would never have that. They would never allow that. You know, they will fight Galactus, you know, by the end of the issue, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing. Hopefully comics should never be boring. And in addition to being decompressed, a lot of it is deconstructed, and a lot of that, you know, if it's done well, it has its place. I mean, certainly Frank Miller, and Neil Gaiman have been able, and Alan Moore, you know,
but
those
you're
guys.
mentioning geniuses. Not everybody's a genius.
Not everybody's a genius, and yeah, there's a lot of people that have tried to do what those guys were able to do, and not been able to do it nearly as well.
But I don't want to see Superman taken down a peg. You know, I want to see Superman being super. You know, I don't want to see Batman stood up at the altar and have his heart broken. I want to see Batman outsmarting the bad guy and being a hero, saving the day. You know.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I could only imagine what's going on in the Fantastic Four. They're breaking apart the family right now, and I don't want that. I want to see the Fantastic Four going off into places that I can't go and discovering things that I can never see. You know, and
sure,
with a smile and a wink on the way. You know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny. I was just listening to a podcast about Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger. You know, and I think that one of the problems with some of the more recent attempts to bring back the Lone Ranger is that they haven't had a fundamental respect for the character. And, you know, if you don't love the character,
why are you doing it?
Why are you doing it? And if you can't appreciate the fact that the character is fundamentally good, you know, if that's a joke to you, or you feel like audiences are going to find that corny, then you might not be the right person to try to tell that story.
You know, you said the right thing. Like I probably catch hell for saying this, but I watched the Zack Snyder films, and I don't think he fundamentally misunderstood Superman.
Yeah.
You know, when Superman lands, you could be on fire, and you look up and you go, "Oh, Superman's here!" Like you're still on fire, but you know you're saved. You know you're not going to die because Superman is here. You know,
sure.
If you're writing a story where you're afraid of Superman, then you're not writing a Superman story. You know. Yeah, so when I saw that movie, I'm like, this might as well be the boys. That might as well have been the Homelander flying around because they wanted to arrest him. And and they did the Green Hornet movie with the Seth. Yeah, I could see
kind of playing it for laughs. Yeah, making
they had no respect. They might as well just made up like the Clown Man or something like that. You know, because that's all it was. Fundamentally, no respect for these characters, and because of that. Are you like you work in Hollywood? Are they going to green light like a good Green Hornet movie now? No.
You know, I think eventually those properties may be evergreen, and somebody will come along. I think we're due for, you know, a great Green Hornet movie. I think there's one to be made. I think they could make a fantastic Flash Gordon movie. You know, as much as I love the 1980s Sam Jones and the Buster Crabbe serials, I would love to see a played straight Flash Gordon movie that incorporated like really cool Art Deco and like kind of steampunk and really interesting aesthetic design, but you know, that played Flash as a true hero.
Right, kind of like the movie that kind of almost got it, that Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Yeah, I really wanted to like that movie. I wanted
to like that, but something about that, it was. I think that movie suffered from a like green screen. Like when you watch behind the scenes, it was just Angelina Jolie talking to nobody with the green screen, and I think they're like. They weren't acting to anybody. They were looking at a camera, reciting lines, and I think an actor needs to be face to face with another actor. You know, even if they're not on screen, have the guy dress up in a costume and you know, behind the camera so the actor can interact with them or something. Because I watched that movie and I was, what's his name, Jude Law, like in that costume. It was so cool. I got so excited, and then I watched it and I was like, it just seems wooden and stiff. But wouldn't that aesthetic look? Flash Gordon, that would be awesome. Buck Rogers.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the problems with green screen stuff is that you can also just start to lose your sense of place. You know, as much as I like 300, when I watch that movie, I don't really know where everybody is in relationship to each other. Like I sometimes feel like I'm watching part of a shampoo commercial. Like,
if Samuel L. Jackson said in the Star Wars prequel movies, he said a lot of it was just him, like an Anakin, or him and Ewan McGregor walking down a hallway talking.
Yes.
And Natalie Portman, you remember that scene? She started, filling up her suitcase when she's talking to Anakin. She said she just asked for a suitcase, but she said because it was just going to be another scene of two actors standing there in front of a green screen, talking. She said, I had enough of this. And I think she's a phenomenal actress. And I've seen Anakin, like I don't even know, Hayden Christensen. I've seen him in other movies. He's a good actor, but man, are they wooden in that movie. And I think that's a problem with the green screen technology movies. It makes some beautiful visuals, but I think it detaches the actors from human acting. And that's what acting is, right? They say acting is reacting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the very first Star Wars film that George directed, I mean, defining movie of my generation.
Best movie ever. I mean, I was in third grade when that movie came out.
Okay, I was in first grade.
I was in third grade. I was like, I remember my brothers came home. My older brother, they said, this movie's for you. And they were telling me about it. They were so excited. But to the point when I actually saw it, I was like, yeah, I had to catch my breath. It was a phenomenon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember seeing it for the first time in the theater with my father, turning to him during the Death Star battle, asking him if it was almost over because I suspected it was. Not because I wanted it to end, but because I never wanted it to end.
Oh,
and,
that is
yeah. And so that movie, it's funny because apparently George Lucas, his one direction that he gave to the actors
faster,
back then was faster and more intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But somehow it worked. I mean, those performances hold up. So
you want to see what a good actor Harrison Ford is? Take all of his dialogue, write it down, and then say it yourself. He says the most ridiculously silly things, but when he said it's cool, I mean, who didn't like Han Solo? He was cool. He delivered those lines with and supposedly he had to fight with Lucas. It's like, no, this is, even I can't say this line.
Yeah.
And the studio fought with him. They didn't give him what he wanted. The machines were blowing up, and he made a great movie because there was actors, there was little props, physical things, art through adversary, I think. And I think the problem with the sequels is, are you going to say no to George Lucas? It's kind of like Elvis walks into the room and he starts singing. Or Jack Nicholson? I think if I was a young director and Jack Nicholson was in my movie, I guess everything's one take because I can't correct this guy.
Yeah. No, there's definitely some of that because I know supposedly George Lucas gave the script for the first prequel to Kevin Smith and said, hey, give me some notes. Let me know what you think, and Kevin Smith read it. And, he's so in awe of George Lucas. I love Kevin Smith, but he said his only note was don't change a word. And I'm thinking, well, in hindsight, maybe a word or two could have been changed. At least.
Well, that brings us back to editing.
Yes.
What I said earlier. Now, do you work with an editor? Do you send off your scripts to somebody?
Not really. I mean, Pete will sometimes give me notes about things, but for the most part, I kind of am my own editor.
Okay. Well, it comes off good. The dialogue is good, so good for you. I know if I handed off something without somebody reading it, it's, and it hurts too. It hurts my feelings, but what do you do?
Yeah, one of the tips that I always tell people if you're looking to write comics is the 2-10 rule. So, and this dates back from Mort Weisinger's era. But when Neil Gaiman was trying to figure out how to write comics and he asked Alan Moore passed this line on to him. He said, no more than 210 words per page subdivided by panels. So if you have about 6 panels, that's about 35 words per page maximum. And what that does is it gives you a good balance between words and picture. And if you find you have more than 35 words per page or per panel in a 6-panel page, then maybe you need to take another page to continue telling that story and expand it a little bit.
So that's words that the reader reads, not direction.
Exactly. Words the reader reads. So dialogue, captions, effects, that kind of thing.
Now, I take it you're an old comic book guy like me. I don't mean old, but you've been reading comics your whole life.
Yeah.
How do you feel like there's no more captions? There's no more thought balloons. It's just all story is through spoken. I feel that there's a time and a place for that kind of storytelling, but I think superheroes, I want to know like their moral compass. I want to know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I use captions, and I use captions sometimes probably the way that comics of the past would use thought balloons. Yes. So, the inner monologue of Abigail Moore is sometimes done in captions, depending upon the scene.
Yeah, and especially that scene when she was talking about her father and everything. Of course, it was captions. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I think you kind of need that, and that's one of the things that comics can do that don't necessarily translate into other mediums. If you're writing a story, you pretty much have to stick to one perspective throughout the entire story. If you're telling a movie, you can have a little bit of voiceover, but too much it becomes too much very quickly. Comics, you can actually change the perspective fairly seamlessly from scene to scene, and it affords you can actually be very subversive, because the panels and the visual can reinforce the captions and the dialogue, or it can undermine it. And sometimes it's fun to do both. Like Alfred Hitchcock famously showed a shot of the New York City skyline and the Statue of Liberty, and then paused and put New York City underneath it as kind of a nod and a wink, like, we know, but we're just going to insult your intelligence anyway. And so it's fun to play around with the capabilities of the medium, for sure.
Now, I don't say this to because this Tinsel Town comic, as I'm holding up here, I think it would make a wonderful movie. I'm one of these people. Dance with the one that brought you here. Like if you're a comic book guy, stay with comics. But I'm not snobby enough to say I got no problems turning it into a movie. I'm surprised that people aren't like knocking on your door. This is a wonderful movie that I think people would. I think this story should be told. I'm not much of a progressive guy, but I think this is like a political story in the best sense of the word. You have a woman who wants to be a police officer, literally in the time when people are telling her take a hike. We don't want. And then when she finally gets the job, it's kind of like a joke. They're teasing her. They're giving her. I think it's funny that inappropriate clothes. Meanwhile, she's covered up more than a nun. But
sure.
They're wolf whistling because it's a sign of the times, and she's taking it in stride, and she's doing what she has to do, and then she earns everybody's respect to the point where in the second series, but it's not like she's not a Mary Sue. She's fallible. She goes back to Dan for some moral support, and Dan's a good guy. So I think this is the kind of comic, and I said at the beginning of our talk that in a healthy industry, this would be celebrated. This would be talked about. People you'd be the toast of the town. I think there's something fundamentally wrong with the comic book industries right now that I don't know if it's if it's just too fractured and there's too many little companies and whatever, or people are actively like, we don't like alternative comics, whatever. I don't know the story. I'm not a mind reader with everybody, but it's like, come on, guys, get your act together. And even the most not even the most, especially the most liberal progressive people should be reading this comic and championing it. And me, I'm more conservative. I wear my politics on my sleeve. If this was the way politics and comics was done today, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it, because it's done with subtlety. It's she's a flawed character,
sure,
but she's a real character, and I admire her, and it's not like made up nonsense. You don't put the bad guys straw man politics and then attack that guy. You know what I mean? Like the one of the bad guys, yeah, and I'm trying not to spoil the story because I want people to read it and see what I'm talking about. He was a bad guy, but not because he was a bad guy. He was a bad guy because like circumstances, and you could see he was kind of ashamed of himself. And I
Yeah.
like that. He wasn't really this mustache twirling villain. Aha, no women shouldn't be comics. You get out of here. You crazy women. Go make me a sandwich.
Right.
You could have done that. That would have been lazy, but
Yeah.
but you didn't. And I think again, this is a perfect example. Like comics were always political. Oh, we gotta. My cat was just down here. He's quiet, walking around. I would have picked him up.
Oh.
Now I got to talk about your cat. I was just talking about heady politics and screw all that. A cat just showed up. What's your cat's name?
Oh, that's Leela.
Oh, Leela. I
Yeah.
have a cat before. Looks like Leela, a little black cat.
Nice. Yeah, no, Abigail Moore is definitely she makes mistakes. She doesn't always get it right.
You froze up.
Oh, okay. Am I back? Okay. You're a little bit frozen now.
Okay, we both.
Okay.
I lost everything. You said Abigail Moore, and then you went dark. So.
Oh yeah, she is a flawed character. She makes mistakes. She doesn't always get it right, but at the end of the day, she's a good person, and she's somebody you want in your corner.
Right.
And it's interesting. I think it's not really a political book, but in as much as the personal is political, I think it's a book that appeals to liberals and conservatives for different reasons.
Right. I think you and I have different politics, and here we are talking, because we're adults.
Sure. Yeah. And I've got liberal friends and conservative friends. And, I have no interest in asking somebody their voting record before I sell them a comic book.
Right.
But,
how small do you want your audience to be is what I ask people when they start.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, but I think, I've had lots of people come up to me and say like, oh, I didn't think I was going to like this comic, but like I bought other stuff by Alterna and I like that. So I picked it up and actually I really like it. I actually had a guy come up to me at Free Comic Book Day and he said, I was just a Marvel DC guy. And I took a chance on your comic book last year because it looked kind of interesting. And he goes, now it's opened up a whole new world of other indie comics for me. And I just wanted to thank you. And I was like, well, thank you for letting me know that. That really means a lot.
I got the same story, like I bought Alterna Comics just because, hey, this is the right price. Even if I don't like them, I turned out. But Tinsel Town was the comic that I was like, this is an important company. And now, until whatever. For the future, for the foreseeable future, I'll be back in everything and getting everything out of Turner. You guys make it easy to just back and get everything, so I appreciate that.
Right.
Logan F.
Says, can I please see your voting record before I support the campaign? Yes. I can fax you that, and also my vaccine record too.
Oh yes. I need to know. I got to know if I will get sick by touching anything that you've written.
Sure.
Yes. It's. Comic, you brought up Breaking Bad, and I will put this in that same category in that it's a real world comic. There's nobody flying around shooting laser beams. The first issue, the first series rather, is a character. You learn it all about the character, and then I think the action. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the action mostly starts in like the last maybe half of the book.
Sure.
So. And because you kind of burned on yourself saying I do decompression story, but I think a decompression story kind of works in a realistic setting. If she was to put on a cape and fly away, I want to see her beating Electro but I know this is a real detective story. You know what I mean? And it you had good pacing. I never did I feel like, okay, just get on with it. I want to see does she shoot anybody? Does anybody die?
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Hopefully you have to establish the characters so that people know who they are and that they care about what happens to them. Otherwise, what's the point of telling the story?
Now, I'm detecting that Tennessee Dan has his own fan club now. Is he going to get a spinoff?
Yeah, Dan is interesting because there is the dichotomy between Abigail is sort of a fake police officer at this point, and she wants to become a real one. Dan is a legitimate cowboy, and he's sort of playing a fake one in the
Right.
movies,
Yeah.
and finding some success with that. So we're gonna see a lot more of Dan in the next Tinsel Town. I purposely kept him a little bit out of the way in Losing the Light, just because I didn't want him to be down in Mexico in the position of going to rescue her. I thought it was more interesting that she kind of endears herself to members of the crew as they're filming by stepping in and sticking up for them. And so when the time comes when she needs a little help from them, they are all more than willing to do something pretty dangerous and arguably foolhardy to try to help her.
I think that was a pretty mature choice as a writer, because it would have been easier just to have Dan go along and help out. But I think that could be a crutch too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good choice. And again, I'm trying not to. I have a tendency of spoiling things. My friends get mad, so I'm biting my tongue. Yeah, I would make a suggestion, like make a Dan little backup in case in Wednesday comics.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I know what's going to happen to some of the side characters, like Billy. Billy is working on the lot now.
Yeah.
And the story Pinboy is going to be included in Losing the Light as well. It's kind of a transition story.
That was in the anthology series. When it came out on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, yeah. And so Billy, I don't want to give anything away, but he's actually going to in the third one, he's going to find a different job on the studio lot that's going to be a step up for him career wise.
Oh, cool. I was gonna start playing my Beat the Writer game with you, but you know what? If I'm right, I don't want to be right, and then like, oh god, ruin your story. So I'll message you, see it later. All right.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, anything you want to bring up? Anything you want to talk about? I have a tendency to talk and dominate these things, and I'm trying to work better.
Oh no, I think we kind of covered it. Just check out the Kickstarter. We've got the single issues are available, both Volume 1 and Volume 2. We've got a reward level that has pins, that has prints, and lots of cool stuff. So, we're about 78% funded. We've got a couple weeks to go on the campaign, so I think we're going to get there, but fingers crossed.
You'll get that. I'm gonna back on Friday on payday. I just got to pay the bills first.
Absolutely, I appreciate
it. And then
it.
Don't forget, you brought this up. You also have an extra comic that you could get about
yes,
solving a vampire.
That's right. You can get the complete Tinsel Town and the complete Children's Vampire Hunting Brigade. Same artist. Yeah, and it's if you like Tinsel Town, chances are you're going to like this. I find that, like, if I tend to find that I like the works of different teams of creators. So
yeah, I tend to follow writers more than artists, although there are certain artists that I also follow. So
sure.
To me, the comic could look glorious, have the greatest, but if there's no story, to me, that's like I brought up early Image comics. I wasn't a fan in the 90s when they look glorious, but I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I kept it to myself. I was like, am I the only one that doesn't understand what's going on? Like, if anybody else?
I think you were probably one of many, but then again, if it weren't for Image, we wouldn't have The Walking Dead, which is one of the great
correct
great comics.
Yeah, they it was like sandpaper. They needed to polish off their stuff, and they're putting out some really great stuff, like you said. Walking Dead, Invincible was awesome. There's so many comics.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kirkman for sure.
Yeah, me too. Did you read Die?
I have not. Do you recommend it?
Yes, I do. I bought it at a loyal. Like I said, I follow writers around, and I just put off reading it because I don't know, something. I read a blurb that said it wasn't. But I really did like it. It's four sons that they're named after the Beatles, and they become assassins, and and it's funny because they each have like a little bit of personalities. I'm a big Beatles fan, so once I saw that,
Yeah.
it really. But then he got like political, and I rage quit it in like issue 7. I'm like, oh, he tricked me. But then he played with that, and I was like, okay, he's a good writer. He messed with me, and he got me. He got me.
Okay.
Tricked me. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
All right, I'll check it out. Yeah, I'm always looking for a good new comic to check out for sure.
Yeah, his firepower.
Uh-huh.
Did you read that at all?
I haven't.
I find that to be just dull, and which is
okay.
Because I like Robert Kirk, but I love that Chris Samney's art. That's like one of the few times I'm buying it because of the art. It's Iron Fist, but Iron Fist has a family, and it's well.
Okay.
I'm rambling now. I'm rambling. Okay.
It's all good.
So you said you have a 3rd volume in the works for Tinsel Town. I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't tell you when because there's a couple other little projects I'd like to do that may happen before.
Comic book projects?
Couple of them are comic book projects. I'd love to do a horror anthology of ghost stories. I'd love to do an all ages superhero book.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big fan of all ages. You got to, I think Marvel and DC are dropping the ball by not having kid-friendly comics. And I don't mean dumbed down. Like I keep reminding people that the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was written for children.
Sure.
Pan, the Wizard of Oz. These are all.
So was The Hobbit. Yeah, the first
Hobbit.
one.
Yes, The Hobbit.
Yeah.
I remember I was on a first date and a last date with the girl. We were just talking about it. She knew I was nerdy, so she's like, "Oh, The Hobbit was the hardest book ever." And I was like, "It's a children's book." That was the end of the date right there. I should have just drove her home.
You said, "Yeah, try reading this book on the theory of semiotics. If the Hobbit stopped you, yeah."
Yeah, guys who are in the audience watches, don't insult the girl's intelligence when you're on a first date. It doesn't work.
No, but then again, it probably wouldn't have worked out.
Yeah, it wouldn't have. that was the hardest book you ever read. Is the children's book.
Right.
Okay, check please.
Right.
Well, it's over an hour, and I got to go to bed. I wake up at 4 a.m. for.
Oh my goodness! All right. I will let you give some winks.
I could talk, and then I regret it in the morning. So I will say, Dave, thank you so much. You're a great guy. I really did like your comic. I'm looking forward. There's 2 volumes of Tinsel Town. You can get both of them on Kickstarter right now. Plus a children hunting vampires. That sounds awesome. So I will definitely be back in this Friday on payday. You said you're going to make an all ages superhero. I can't wait for that. God willing, please. Now, is this going to be more alternative stuff, or are you going to be doing this on your own?
To be determined. I mean, certainly I'll give Pete that option, but whether or not it's a good fit, that's kind of up to him.
Yeah, well, he's looking for continuing stories these days, right? Not so much one shots anymore. Okay, well, whatever you do, just let us know, and I'll be there buying it. I'm a big fan. I think you're a great writer. I'm really interested in Abigail Moore. I don't know. I don't know if you're playing games with me, because something in my spidey sense is warning me that something bad's going to happen to Dan, and I don't know if I could ever forgive you.
Well, okay, yeah, something bad's going to happen to. It's funny that you say that, because there is a potential plot line that I've been playing with for the 3rd one. I don't want to give anything away, but they say you're supposed to torture your characters,
right.
And definitely one of the things I'm considering with Dan goes right up to a certain line that I'm still not sure whether or not I want to cross. I'll say that.
Okay, fair. I'm trying to get a comic script together, and the things I'm going to do to this poor character. I feel, but the reason why, because I like Dan, and I like a good guy, and I think like a good wholesome relationship is like a rare thing in comic books these days. It's almost like everybody's like, they don't want to show like a nice happy couple, and I understand, because you want drama, so it's refreshing. So when I see them together, I'm like, he's setting me up. You know, he's gonna pull the rug out. But I
Well,
care. That's why, you know.
but hopefully their relationship isn't boring, you know. Like
No.
I like the show Perry Mason. I like the plot of the show. I think it's an interesting show, but man, something about the relationships, like the romantic relationships of the characters on that show, just feel very dull to me. Like there's no, I don't know what it is. Like I feel like the guy that's writing the plot is great at plotting, but the human relationships he needs help.
He's written by a Vulcan.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm having a lot of fun talking, but the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. So
I hear you, sir.
I got to go up and have dinner and then go to bed. But thank you so much for coming. I was looking forward to this all week. You know,
Thank you so much for having me.
Fan for life, and anytime I see you mentioning something, I'll be the first in line to pick it up. Thank you so much. And send me the links. I'll put links in the description for anything, because I think people should be buying your comics in a healthy industry. You know, you would be celebrated. People would be lining up they'd be recruiting you to write X-Men right now.
Well, we'll see. It ain't over yet.
It would, I don't even know if would you want to write Marvel these days?
I don't know. You know, it's funny. X-Men's. I probably wouldn't want to write X-Men because that's not actually a comic that's ever resonated with me. I'm more of like a Daredevil, Spider-Man kind of guy. Yeah, I could sink my teeth into those.
I could see you. That would be good because he's more realistic. Far, I know you from Tinsel Town, and you seem like a more realistic guy. You know, I could see you right. I would love to read your Daredevil stories. That would be good. You know, I would love to write the X-Men, but I guarantee you, people wouldn't be happy what I would do to those characters.
Yeah,
they're the bad guys. That's spoiler alert. My X-Men, they would be the bad guys. All right, but again, you're gonna get me talking for another 20 minutes because you're a great guy to talk to. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye everybody. Thank you for coming. If you watch this, it usually takes a couple of hours for the chat to repost. So give it a couple of hours. Everything should refresh and everything. People have been asking me, "Where's the chat?" I don't know. I don't. Between StreamYard and YouTube, there's some sort of disconnect. It takes a couple of hours. So thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow with a new video. And please go to Kickstarter, Tinsel Town, Losing the Light. What the director's cut?
Yep.
All right. See you.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.